I guess no set order for any of the questions on who can answer first or who doesn't answer, but let's just get started. If everyone can just introduce themselves, where you work, what you do, how long you've been there maybe, and company size.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Susan Lee. I'm the head of people at Warby Parker. I've been there just over 15 months. I came to Warby by way of Spotify. I have a team of 15 kick-ass, amazing talent professionals who inspire me and challenge me every single day. Our company is just hitting over 700 people. For the first time this year, we're going to surpass our headquarters headcount by our retail locations. We have 31 stores right now. We're opening 25 this year. So the growth is fast. It is at a large scale, and it's a really exciting time for us.
So hi, my name is Peggy Rubenzer, and I am the Senior Vice President of People Resources for Shake Shack. Shake Shack, when I started with the company 5 years ago, we had probably 800 employees total. We now have about 2,900 employees. We've gone from 7 locations when I started to now 94 locations, including our international businesses. I have a team, we're located here in New York City right off of Union Square. My team, my HR team itself is, I have 8 people, including myself. So scalability and those kinds of things are a really important piece of the pie for us, piece of the hamburger for us.
I'm Sarah Patterson. I'm with Bonobos. I'm the Chief People Officer. We have approximately 350 employees. It's about a 50-50 split, headquarters and retail stores. We have 21 guide shops nationwide. We are going to probably open anywhere between 10 and 13 this year, so we're also on a path for growth. I have approximately, all in with our office ninjas, 10 to, okay, I'm checking with my team, hold on. How many team? Okay, 11. We have 11 employees on our POPs team, and I've been there about 9 months.
Hi, my name is Adam Goldberg. I am the Director of Human Resource Operations for Ogilvy and Mather. It's one of the largest and oldest advertising and marketing companies in the world. We have a little over 500 offices worldwide, 22,000 employees. In the US, we are roughly about 4,000 people. My role, my title is a little bit of a misnomer. I kind of jump around. I do a lot of project work, so I am working and really bringing together all the different specialty functions within the HR practice. So I work across L&D, talent acquisition, diversity and inclusion, and a lot of other areas on a lot of special projects. So I like to get my hands in a little bit of everything.
Hello, my name is Jim Scarfoni, and I am fortunate to be with Kind Healthy Snacks, for those of you that have seen the bars. I joined the company just about a year ago, actually, a year and a month. So I'm just a relative newcomer to the organization. It was founded in 2004, but the growth has really kind of occurred in the last probably 3 to 4 years. The company has doubled in size in each of those years. So many people say, boy, I see them everywhere now. That's why, because we've doubled in size and now we're in every major channel of distribution. So it's been great growth for the company. We have about 600 team members around the country and in the UK and in Canada now. And so we are definitely looking at international expansion. I am fortunate to have 10 people on my team. Many of them are scattered throughout here this evening, so they keep me very busy and chase me around all day. My career has mainly been in retail, so I spent 20 years at Toys R Us, three years at Ulta Beauty, 5 years at Dwayne Reed, and a little bit in the fashion world, but here I am at Kind. Happy to be here.
Thank you guys so much. Again, it's wonderful to have all of you here. So I'd like to start the evening just talking about the beginning, like starting at the very beginning when you guys think about the people experience, the recruiting process. And when you think about, so many things have changed over the last few years. So when you think about the brand, your organization's brand, and your recruiting process, what are some of the things that you've done to kind of keep up with the changes and ensure that the organization is moving with the market?
I'm happy to start. So at Ogilvy,
I could start.
she always tries to do this to me when we're on panels together. So we're very lucky at Ogilvy and Mather. The company was founded in 1948 with David Ogilvy, who is one of the original madmen. And we have a really great legacy. But what we've noticed over the last few years is that we really can't rest on our laurels. And over the last year or so, we've made a lot of strides to kind of refocus on our employment branding. And we really started with research. So a lot of it came out, I was looking at a Mary Meeker report. I don't know if some of you guys are familiar with them. They were talking a lot about millennials and what they look for. So what we did was use some of that information to inform how we change our career site. Now, if you take a look at our career site, we have launched a learning and development as one of the primary focuses there. We've done a little bit more videos where our CEO is interacting with a millennial and they're playing ping pong, they're getting mani and pedis in the office together, they're having a great time, and we're really trying to target a very different market that we have in the past, not just advertising students, advertising professionals. We're really looking for a very different group of people. So in the past, we always rested on industry surveys, LinkedIn, most in demand. We looked at Ad Age, best places to work, and we really used that as the driver of our employment branding. But what we've realized is we have to get a little more progressive about it. We really have to do what we do as a business, which is persona building. We have to figure out what is that Mike, the millennial, what is he looking for? What is the freelancing Frank looking for? Those sort of characters, and really figure out how to go out there and target them. And that's stuff that we're just starting to dig into a little bit more right now.
Okay, even at Bonobos, when I think about my own experience and in the recruitment process, when I started that process and I tried to look at what it was like to work at Bonobos, I found very little available. So there wasn't a window of opportunity to see into what the organization was really like. There was lots of information about the product, the business itself, and Andy, our CEO. So we have actually a push this year to make that more available to candidates through social media and leveraging Andy himself and other talent within the organization and using the social media to spread the word. But once you're in the organization, even as a candidate, the candidate experience is incredibly high touch. And you immediately feel the warmth and the goodness that the people bring to the organization. And it's so attractive. And our candidate experience is one of the best. And people come back to us and talk about it all the time because we not only inform the candidate of everybody who they're going to meet, we service up packets of bios. The candidates are escorted all over the organization. They're given tours. Everybody is always on time. It's very attentive. It's a really wonderful experience. And then you come to know what it's like to work at Bonobos. And that's headed up by Kelsey Garsk, who's in the audience.
Do you guys all have your pens out? Because I'm going to have you take some notes. This is a note taker. Recruiting is hard. It is hard. And it doesn't matter where you're working. It doesn't matter what your budgets are. I will bet you if you're working recruiting at Google, you're going to say it's hard. It's hard to find talent, especially when there are so many opportunities for people today, and there's such competition for good talent. For us at Warby, what's challenging is we are not an e-commerce company, we're a tech company. We're not just a tech company, we're a retail company. We're not just retail, we're fashion. We're not just fashion, we're a lifestyle brand. So how do you sell this to a group of people who say, I want to work at Warby Parker? And I never invite my staff here because they've heard these stories over and over again, but I remember when I first started at Warby, someone said to me, you must be so excited, you must love working at Warby Parker, some random person, and I said, why would you say that? You know nothing about Warby Parker. They're like, no, they buy a pair, give a pair, and they do good, and they have a really cool hit brand. And I said, yeah, that's our consumer brand, but I don't know if that necessarily resonates as an employer brand. Now, I don't know that it doesn't, but one of the things I realized is that we were really resting on this consumer brand of who Warby Parker was, and I wanted to make sure that that was a genuine feeling and what resonated with our employees on a day-to-day basis. So this year we have kicked off what we call the Team Warby Tour. Our talent team is going out to select retail locations. We're holding workshops in our HQ, and we're getting absolutely the direct words from our employees. What is it like to work here? What are your challenges on a day-to-day basis? What do you brag to your friends about Warby Parker? And we start by asking, what do our customers say about us? What do our investors say? But we start crossing off those go-to words like do-good or hipster if it doesn't resonate with them on a day-to-day basis. And so we're really narrowing down the truth. And what I believe is really important about recruiting today is it has to be an honest conversation and a story about what someone's going to get at your company. Because on day 1 or day 2, they're going to figure out the bullshit. So figure out what's the honest conversation.
And I would say at Kind, I feel we're very lucky because our our brand is our brand to the public is also our employer brand. We're here to spread kindness throughout the world, and we say that in many ways. So our founder founded the company based on the principle that we are a not only for profit company. So while we're here to make money, because that will fuel our growth, that's not the only reason that we exist. And so that premise is what drives our employment brand. And so we look for people who want to be part of our Kind movement, and we actually call it the Kind movement. We have a small department that is the Kind movement at our headquarters. But more importantly, the people that we engage with, the talent that we look for, there has to be some level of kind of resonating of that social mission, because when they come to Kind, it's what we talk about, it's who we are, it's how we go to market. It's how we treat each other every day. And so we look for those values when we meet people, when we interview them, when they come to our office, when we escort them. And Kayla Starr, who's here, escorts everybody, keeps them on time, makes it a very warm experience. It's really important to us that they understand what they're coming into. I think just like you mentioned, that it's important. It's not, we're different than other companies. So our brand is really important to us. We did a survey last year. We asked current team members, we asked for several reasons why they joined the company, but 73% said they joined because of the social mission. And 90% of them said that since they've joined Kind, they find themselves thinking about doing kind acts more often. So we know it's a powerful motivator and draw into our company. And so we use that as our magnet to attract people and hopefully engage with them as talent.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. There's a quick follow-up question I wanted to ask, in particular, Jim, and then also you, Sarah, about the process that you guys have laid out, where you say you guys make a lot of effort into making sure people are on time, that people get to meet people. It's a very friendly recruiting process, and I think that's something that a lot of organizations aim to do, but it's not very easy to execute on, especially when everyone who's interviewing the candidates are running around. I mean, we run into this issue all the time at Udemy, but what are some of the things, if there is any advice that you do have on ways to make the recruiting process smooth?
For us, I think it's the fact that we do spend the time, the recruiting team spends the time escorting the candidates and ensuring that the next interviewer is available and ready to go. And they will hover and breathe down your neck if you're not. I've been there. But I want to say as well, I agree with Susan. Recruiting is really hard. I spent 20 years as a recruiter, and I understand that. And what I always say, and I think the recruiting team here at Bonobos feels the same, and so do most of the employees there. We can't fake it, right? I don't see any of our names up in lights in Hollywood. We're not great actors. So it really comes down to how you are perceived by the candidate and what they're hearing and feeling from you in that interviewing process. And that has to be authentic. And that's the number one, it's the number one way to best attract the best talent.
So we do a lot of the similar things, and again, Kayla is awesome at greeting every candidate. There's a schedule that's set up for them. We put them into a small conference room until the first interview is ready, and then she'll escort them and then wait, and 5 minutes before the end of the interview, she'll knock on the door and remind us that time is up and move to the next. More importantly, though, when the person is in our office, we're very proud of our office, and it speaks to who we are and speaks to the kind of the soul of our brand. So we tour them around. We have a kitchen area. We have a big wall that has every one of our bars. It's called the Bar. But we always stop at the Bar, and they get a bag full of as many bars as they can take, or as many as we can give them. But but it gives them a flavor of what it's like to be there, because people kind of work in the kitchen area. They have small meeting areas where they can talk. So it gives the candidates a flavor of what it's like to be in there, and kind of the culture that is alive and every day, that they can see it. I think that's really important for people to see that and want to be part of that.
Great. Adam.
I think the one other part that's missing is actually relying on your managers. So a big part of what we do at Ogilvy is we have a hiring for success program, and a lot of our training, which is a 3-hour training, which feels very small for such an important task of recruiting, we spend a lot of time on the candidate experience and educating our managers on how to do that properly. One of the exercises I always give them is, tell me 5 reasons why someone would want to work for you, and 5 reasons why someone would want to work for your department or your company or this company. And it really makes managers think about sharing what the experience is like at Ogilvy and Mather or whatever company you're really at. And I found it to be very valuable. People come to companies for their managers, they come to companies for the actual company, and in those 2 questions, you can get a lot of understanding and a lot of excitement for your brand. And I think our people are our brand. And that's something that I think is often forgotten. No matter how much HR does, at the end of the day, it's the people that work for you that are going to be the best sales and the best people to talk about what the company's like. They're living it, they're breathing it.
Great. So moving on from kind of the recruiting process, and let's look at an employee's first day at one of your companies. What does that first day look like? How have you sort of crafted it? And what do you do in terms of onboarding? How do you onboard new people?
I'll jump in on this one. Our first day at Shake Shack is really important for us. For the longest time, and kind of back to the prior question, for the longest time we wanted to make sure that the brand that our employees were experiencing was as cool and fun and hip as the brand that our guests experience. So we've done a lot of things to make sure that they get to experience that. And that first day, what we do is we break our orientation into 2 pieces. And it's actually 2 days long. The first day, we do all of the fun things. We give them their uniform. We give them tastes of all of our menu items. We believe that being fluent in our menu is incredibly important to being able to make eye contact with someone on the first day. So if you can teach them how to understand and speak about the menu, and you spend some time on that tasting and understanding and talking about those menu items on the first day, then the chances are that they're more comfortable looking at a guest in the eye and not being afraid of a question that they might not be able to answer. So that's really important for us. We also put them with a kind of a mentor for the day, and we take them through the day that way, introduce them to all of the different stations in the kitchen and tour them through. We have a journal that we start on that first day that's basically a 30-day journal. So we introduce them to the journal, and it has, culture-related questions and kind of scavenger hunt types of things for them to do. We do all of the fun things on the first day. Second day, we talk about benefits. We take them through all of the rest of the paperwork that they may not have completed on the electronic onboarding process that we use. And we get them involved right away in a program that we call Shack Source. Shack Source is our online training and engagement tool for our employees. And in that tool, we take them through every bit of mandatory materials we need for them to complete. We take them through some of the fun. We call it Shackademics 101. Everything is Shack, by the way. So we take them through all of those other pieces that, while they're fun, they're also administrative, but we try to kind of mix some of the fun in with it. We involve an employee alongside us as much as we can to kind of participate and be their contact and their partner and their go-to person. And that's pretty much what our first couple of days looks like at a Shake Shack. At the home office, we have just kind of a fun tour, spend time with each department, and we have an entire day where we set up the breakfast in the morning. We have a new hire happy hour that we do, and then we have what we call lunch roulette, and that is that for the first month, we take any new hire that comes in, and we randomly select people to go to lunch with them. And they'll eventually learn all of the people through the course of that first month. That's what we do at our home office.
I'm taking that one.
I'm too.
No.
I won't take you guys. I won't take you guys through the entire day, but I'll tell you a couple of the key things that I think are super important. So all of us in our companies, we want to build on our culture, and we want to show our culture off to someone who's new. If you think about culture, whether it's in a company or whether it's in civilization, it's about community. It's about having kind of that, inside joke, the things that the people that are in the know all share. So a couple of things that Warby does that actually don't mean anything at all other than you get to be a part of Warby Parker. When you walk into the office and you sit at your desk, you have a big-ass bag of Martin's pretzels. There are these huge pretzels that will break your jaw as you eat them. Nobody understands why. To this day, I'm here a year later, I don't really know the real answer as to why, but we hear that our CEO loves them and he likes to walk past these newcomers' desks, say hello, and steal a bunch of pretzels. So if you walk in, on your desk is also Jack Kerouac's Dharma Buns. We don't explain why Dharma Buns is on that desk. People don't know if they're going to be tested on this book. They don't know where it comes from. If they take the time to read it, they'll see two of the characters in the book are named Warby and Parker. So what we also do is on our first all-hands meeting, we make every single new employee come up and introduce themselves and tell a fun fact. These fun facts are normally ridiculous. It's crazy how many people have been on reality shows, who have been hit on by actors, who have, some guy said he was having to guard a bunch of jewel thieves. I mean, just random fun facts. But it's this whole notion of you're in the know now with Warby Parker. You're part of the community. It doesn't have to have any impact on their job at all. It doesn't have to have anything that is part of our elevator pitch. It is just this welcoming of you're accepted here, you're part of us.
We also do a lot of the similar things that you've heard up here from the panel. We also meet and greet. We walk everybody. We introduce them to every team member that's in the office that day, and anybody that's in an office will stop and say hello to every new team member. So again, it's high touch, and we want them to feel like Kind brand ambassadors from day one. So we give them a lot of stuff. They get the Kind T-shirt, they get Kind jackets, and they love putting on Kind garb right away. So it's important. A couple other things that we do, we send them out on a field marketing activation. So we'll have them join our field marketing team at an event. They'll do sampling. They'll hand it out to people on the streets or in a grocery store or whatever. So they get to feel what it's like to get a reaction from our consumer on what our product is and our brand. And just as an aside, we all did that 2 weeks ago. And some of you may have been victims of our breakfast bar takeover, where we hit all the subway stations in New York City and other major cities. And the first thing from 8 till 10 in the morning, we handed out our new breakfast bar. So we were all out there, everybody. And it was great because you get to feel what the brand is like from the consumer's perspective. Our CEO, Daniel Lebetsky, is a very interesting dude. He's, for those of you that have never met him, he is just an amazing guy to work with, incredibly smart, very passionate. He wants to know everybody by name. So once every 2 to 3 months, we'll collect all new hires. He'll spend 3 to 4 hours with them, get to know each one of them by name, everything about their family. He'll ask them some good questions that, maybe, go over the line sometimes, but that's Daniel. But he gets to know them and they get to know him, and he'll give them the kind message, but throughout that discussion, he'll come up with a name for that group based on something they said or some theme that's emerging from that group. So we have the weird eaters, the jolly technologists, and so the challenge is that within a year, that group has to create a video that we will pay for and produce. It's professionally done, and that video then gets shown to the rest of the company and gets then embedded on our website. So we do a lot of things to kind of make them feel like part of the brand and brand ambassadors. They also go out on a sales trip. So they'll go with one of our sales team members, and see what it's like to sell into a retailer.
I'll make this quick. We're in the process of blowing up our orientation and really changing our viewpoint on it. We're really moving to looking at it as a 365-day orientation. We don't want it to be just the first 1 or 2 days. So we're starting to build in quarterly new joiner events. I think Susan mentioned stuff about community, right? That's a huge part about what we want to start doing at Ogilvy. We want to introduce them to our diversity and inclusion. We have affinity groups that lots of our employees attend a lot of the different meetings and build great relationships out of that. We want to do round table discussions where we bring in executives and they can kind of get to know the staff. They share, you know, you've been here for a quarter now. What have you seen? Where were you before? What did you like better? So we're really looking for maker events, things like that that bring people back together, that where they can be excited about it. And we're trying to move away from the idea of orientation just being that first week, that first few days. It's a full year-long process because honestly, it takes at least a year to really start to master your job. And that's something we want to try to push forward as we move forward in our onboarding planning.
Great. So we had a slide up there earlier that Doug was going through talking about all the changes that are happening across any job, right? And we're not only seeing it, the example we put up there was obviously for marketing, but it's happening across, you know, engineering, any operations roles, sales roles. And so when you think about the fact that jobs are changing and being reinvented every 3 to 5 years, how do you think about bringing in some of those continuous learning opportunities for your employees to make sure that they get the skills that they need to continue to do their jobs, change jobs, and grow in their roles?
So I'll jump in on this. One of the things that we believe in very strongly is that people have a threshold of happiness. And so, especially in kind of the hourly employee ranks, we feel like, you know, they have this big learning curve, and then they hit it, and then they're kind of just starting to sink, and just when they're starting to sink, we want to hit them with something new. So we keep trying to hit them at certain points. Certain people hit that more quickly, and certain people take longer to hit that. We let people go at their own pace. We have something that we call the Shack experience. Sorry. That is our, that is our term for the employment experience and the learning experience. And really what happens is from an hourly position, as we hire a new person on board, depending on their learning curve and their learning style, we have a certification program, and we say, your career is in your hands. You get to decide how quickly you move up the steps or you stay put and take your time. So the way that we do it is we have our certification program. They're required to go through 2 certifications. We take our kitchen and we break it into all different pieces, and so the certifications focus on different parts of the kitchen. So they get 2 certifications, and they become a Shack trainer, which means that they're certified to train those 2 parts of the kitchen. 2 more certifications, by the way, that's also a pay increase. 2 more certifications makes them a cross trainer, and a cross trainer stands for consistent reinforcement of Shack standards. They're the ones who are kind of, they take the training kind of in their hands in the Shack, and they're the ones who kind of say, you today are going to train on the grill. So at any rate, those are 4 certifications. Those enable people to go and do international openings. Those enable people to go do, actually 2 certifications, back up, enables people to do domestic openings. So we take people, first time some people have ever even been on an airplane, we'll take them across the country, and they get to spread the Shack love around the country. And then eventually around the world. 4 certifications makes you the cross trainer. 6 certifications makes you eligible to become a shift manager. And that's the entry-level management role. That's kind of the way that we do it. All of it is online. We invite people. We don't have a big training department with produced video and all of that. Our training tools come from our employees. So we invite our employees to produce their own training materials on their iPhones. They can upload it from their iPhone onto our platform, and then we decide which ones win. When they win, they get a t-shirt that says Shack Famous. So they are famous around the country, and we use all of those training videos. We don't produce our own training videos, our team does. So everything is organic, and I think that that's part of what not only keeps them engaged in what we're doing, but also kind of keeps them on top of the learning. And it's also a little bit of a competitive piece as well. So that's a really big part of our hourly training or what we do to engage at that level. We also have a huge annual leadership retreat that we take all of our leaders to. Every manager at every Shake Shack comes to our leadership retreat where we spend 3 days just immersing them in information, fun, and connection, because I think that it's really, really important for our teams to get to know each other and know that there's somebody across the country who feels some of the same, I'll say, pain points that they feel at times with some of the volumes that we do in our locations. So most everything we have is online. Some of it's also demonstration based, but that's how we try to keep our folks engaged.
At a former employer, I produced a learning program called the Digital Learning Conference, and what we were intending on doing was to help increase the digital competency at a publishing company called Condé Nast. And yeah, so anyway, we produced this really wonderful program. It was 5 days, 8 hours a day of learning across the organization. We had outsiders come in, we had internal subject matter experts come in, and we did that program. And now that I'm at Bonobos, we decided to do something very similar, and we're producing this in June, or this month, and it's called Learn No Boast. And we are doing something very similar. We're bringing in outside resources to help facilitate sessions. Adam's coming. And we also have internal subject matter experts. But we also do something very similar. We have a platform that our guide shops are able to use. Guide shop managers produce videos around how to, discuss and talk about the product, styling, et cetera, and share those videos on the platform, which has been very helpful for others in other guide shops. We have been producing our own internal videos for training purposes, and we intend on doing much more and creating our own content as well. And we also have facilitated sessions for management training, leadership training for associates on how to manage up well, because I think they're sometimes forgotten and they need help as well in how to manage their relationships with their managers. So we're doing quite a few programs this year. We're going to see what works, what doesn't, what resonates with the people, and then we'll go back and refine the following year.
So similar, we did some analysis of our workforce because we have grown so quickly and we brought on so many people in the last couple of years. And so just a data point, we have 134 managers defined as anybody that manages at least one person. The age ranges from 25 to 60, just over 60. And the median age is 33. So the median age of our managers is 33. They have 2.5 years of tenure, which means, to me, says they're probably first, maybe second-time managers. And so I've been fortunate to attract a new team member, Melissa Delbrocolo. She's here, and she joined me as a senior director of talent. And so right now we're building a supervisory management program because we recognize that these managers are leading the workforce for the future. And as we're scaling up, they need to scale as quickly. So that's an incredibly important focus for us right now. The other thing we did, because our values are so important for us, we have 8 values under the umbrella of hungry and kind. And so the hungry are around ownership and entrepreneurial problem solving, and kind is around teamwork, caring, development. We built we called it an ingredients guide. So ingredients to success, which are our values, and we developed a guide because we needed to get something into the hands of our team members that kind of talked about what are the behaviors of these values, how do they know if it's working, how do they know if there's deficiencies, and then from a coaching perspective, things that you can do to help somebody develop in any one of those values of ownership or entrepreneurism or developing others. And we believe kind of in this concept of 70, 20, 10. So 70% of your learning is going to come on the job, and we try to make those experiences enriching and real. 20% is the time you spend with your manager or mentor or coach, and 10% is what we can provide through training programs or online. And so at the end of the ingredients guys, there's a bunch of hot links to either videos or other resources that we've been able to pull together and curate kind of something that helps them learn about that value.
Great. You guys have touched a little bit on career pathing in the last question, but wondering if you could maybe elaborate a little bit more about the conversations that you have around career pathing. I think a lot of managers and as leaders of your organization, you likely get many questions about, what do I need to do to get to the next step or the next level? So how do you think about leveling in your companies and just general, like providing people with a clear path to advancement?
I'll start. Career development is one of the things that we're asked the most as a talent team. When we do our employee engagement survey, it's our lowest scoring result of how we don't do it well. And I think what's interesting is, as we were sitting there like scratching our heads and what do we do about this, the thing is I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you your future. I don't know what your next role is potentially. We're a fairly flat company. You may be in a role today and tomorrow you may tell me you love marketing, and then the next day you may really want to learn how to code. I cannot promise you what your next steps are going to be, and that's the difficult conversation. So what we have done is switched career pathing to skills development. So if you are in a customer service role and you tell me you're going to be here for 2 years, and for 2 years I'm going to tell you the things that you're going to learn while you're in this role. I'm going to promise you that the time that you're committed to this, you're going to learn how to be customer facing. You're going to learn how to problem solve. You're going to learn how to write your own email in response, in a technical email. You will identify the things that you're going to need to do to be successful in this role that you're going to get. So when you leave Warby Parker, it's been very clear what you're walking away with. And the reason that I approach it this way is Warby, we are a learn, grow, repeat company. We're not great at saying, here's all of these training programs, because we're like, you sit down, do some work, here's some other work that needs to be done, who wants to do that? You don't know how to do that, figure it out, learn, grow, repeat. It's not perfect. But the people that are able to excel are ones that learn, grow, and repeat. They keep going. And so, but the reason I move it to skills development is I started my career as a network engineer. And I literally never spoke to a human being all day. I mean, I just sat in front of a computer, and I hated my job, like, with a passion. And then I thought, oh, I will get into something else. What else can they do? They're like, well, you can do training of network engineers. I'm like, oh, it's so great. And I get in front of network engineers. I'm like, oh, I hate this job. Let me show you how to do it, And so ultimately, I just decided I can't do this anymore. And I was making a decent living, and then I thought, when I went to school at UCSD, all I knew is you could be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, or an engineer. And this is what my parents would tell me. You got to do one of those things or you're a failure. I had never heard of HR, marketing, PR. I didn't know what any of those things were. So here I am, an engineer, miserable in my life, and if I asked someone to tell me what my career path was, they're like, oh, you can be senior network engineer. And I'd be like, this sounds miserable. So I literally just started my career over. I found a job on Craigslist probably. It was like for an admin assistant for an HR thing. And I'm like, what's HR? Okay, I can do this. So I just started my career over, and it just took off from there because I found a passion and I found skill sets that I was going to, I could just tell I was going to be good at. And so what I have just found is, like, I joke with my team, I say, you want to know what career development is? Career development is when I'm about to retire, I'm going to go get a job at Google and be number 50 on their HR team. I'm going to clock in and clock out and leave at 6 o'clock. That's my career development. That's my end game. I can't tell you what your end game is, nor can I tell you the path to get there, but I can tell you these are the skills you're going to get in this role at Warby Parker, and if you want to take that somewhere else, then I'm going to develop you to get there. If you want to take it to the next level at Warby Parker, I'm going to develop you to get there. If you want to take it to a cross-function at Warby Parker, I'm going to develop you to get there. So the challenge is, our challenge and how we're facing that challenge is to change the conversation. I'm not going to be able to show you the path, but I can show you all the different steps you can take to get to a path. So that's kind of how we're approaching it.
So 100% agree with that when it comes to our home office and kind of how we are set up at our home office. I recently had somebody come up to me and say, I wish that I knew just very clearly what my next job in the home office was going to be. They were in a finance and accounting role. And I said, well, here's the deal. You could go to any other company that's well established, that's been around for years, that has a very clear career path for you. Or You can be at a company that's cutting edge, growing, exciting, and you get to name what that could look like. So to your point, I 100% agree with that. In terms of our operations is different. For us, we feel like we need to grow leaders from within. We use a term that we say we're leaders training future leaders. So we're constantly trying to bring our own teams up, because the familiarity with the operation and the kitchen and the guest experience and the volumes and all of that is incredible experience to be able to develop from within. So we have, I mentioned to you the Shack experience, which is a really clear step-by-step process. Each step means an increase in wages, it means a new title and an additional set of responsibilities. So our hope is that as we hire people, we're hiring potential future leaders, and then we teach our managers how to bring people up those stair steps of the Shack experience. And by the way, that goes all the way from that hourly team member to an area director, multi-unit person as well. So we take people all the way through a career path with very clear training and development steps along the way.
There's two things that I have done in my past career. One at Hachette Book Group when I was in book publishing that I really loved. I think one of the challenges we noticed was people didn't know enough about other pieces of the business to know where they wanted to go. So what we started was something called Open Meetings Week. And it was a really easy concept. We basically had the administrator of that weekly meeting say, we can have 5 extra people come this week to this meeting. And we allowed people to rotate into other sides and just listen to the weekly status meetings that happened, learned a lot about the business, and that really helped employees understand not only other avenues they could go, what really interested them. We had tons of people that wanted to be editorial assistants but ended up in sales or marketing, and they didn't know what it meant to be an editorial assistant. So we gave them that opportunity to see and actually live and breathe that moment a little bit with them, and it was great because it actually ended up helping with collaboration throughout the company. The other thing I'm doing currently is we're blowing up performance reviews. This is kind of a common theme for Ogilvy. We're blowing up a lot of things we've done in the past in HR. But we're calling it career conversations. And one of the biggest things we're doing is incorporating a me goal, M-E. So it really gives the manager, it's a goal that you as an employee want to accomplish. It doesn't even have to be work related. It can be, I really want to go spend more time with my family, or I want to go to that spin class every Wednesday. That sort of stuff, that's a goal for me that I'm going to try to set. It creates a connection with your manager, and it gives them better insight into you as an employee, and then can kind of help them. Sometimes they do just drop things like, hey, I want to work on this skill. I want to learn how to code. It's like, okay, now I understand maybe where some of your passion lies. I can help direct you now. But so often we go to your employee, what do you want to do? And we put it on them. If we ask them what they're really passionate about, we can learn a lot about how to direct them on where the next step should be, because we don't have all the answers.
Can I jump back in for 1 second, too? I wanted to mention, because you mentioned performance reviews and performance management, what's the conversation? One of the things that we incorporated company-wide, starting with our hourly employees, is what we call a touch base. And we don't call them reviews anymore. We call them a touch base session. And so it feels a little less formal. It feels a little bit more like a dialogue and a conversation. It's basically broken into 3 really simple columns. It's where I am, where I want to be, and how I get there. And that's what the conversation is for us.
We're doing very similar things here. First, we coach our managers to actually, I believe managers feel they have to have all the answers for their employees and their careers, and they get a lot of pressure. They feel pressure, especially if they're junior managers, to have all the answers for the employees and figure it out on their behalf. So we're coaching managers to ask the right questions. What is it? Very similar. What do you still feel you need to develop? What do you want to do with your career? All of those good questions are where the manager should go in order to figure out what they can do to help support the career growth of their employees. The other thing we're also having our managers talk about is the fact that, especially in our company, we're a later stage startup. There's a very big difference between a $100 million company from a $50 million company, a $250 million company from a $100 million company. You could go on and on and on. So even in the role, if we even asked ourselves right here and now, have we learned everything there is to learn and know, and do we have every skill and understanding needed to be as good as we are at this level? We would all say absolutely not. So we really want to challenge employees to own it and to figure out where they can still, close the gap in their role that they're in right now, because there is so much to learn and grow and know, especially in these changing times, and especially because our businesses are changing so rapidly. So your role is going to change as well, and that gives the employee opportunity right there.
Just quickly, at Kind, we have the similar issue. We are kind of a late-stage startup, but because we were a startup, we have a lot of team members that have been there almost since the beginning, and so they're used to doing a lot of different things, and they love that. And so we're trying to encourage, kind of, as opposed to a career ladder, where as a flat organization it becomes very difficult, is to get career experiences and not be afraid to jump into a project or another area and become part of that project or that experience, because I'm a big believer that growth comes when you're pushed outside of your comfort zone. So doing what you do every day is good, but it doesn't necessarily help you grow. And so we're trying to find a way to help our team members recognize that growth doesn't necessarily have to be up. It can be across, and it can be different for every team member. And so we're also working with our managers to help instill that mindset. But again, similar to what everyone here has been talking about, we're struggling with a lot of the same challenges.
Sarah, did you have something?
It's a career lattice, not a ladder.
So I'd love to touch a little bit on generational trends. Millennials are a very hot topic. I think we have a lot. How many people in the audience are millennials? Quite a few. And we often hear, we often hear people talking a lot about millennials in the workplace and dealing with new generations coming in, and they have different expectations. And how are you guys dealing with these shifts in your organizations today? And have you found anything to work particularly well or not work well?
I mean, in our organization, I think maybe there's myself and 3 others who aren't millennials. So, I mean, it's not as shocking or as glaring an issue because everybody's a millennial. And so, and I'm a sucker for a millennial because they are like sponges, and they're really dedicated, and they're highly engaged, and they want to learn more, and they want to be involved, and they care about each other. There's such great goodness there. Condé Nast. There were multiple generations under one roof, and it was problematic, and people didn't know. You had the baby boomers and the Gen Yers or Xers, like everything else, trying to figure out how to manage these millennials. Oh my God, they're bothering me so much. They want everything. I don't know how to manage them. They want attention. They want to be the director, the president of the United States. It was overwhelming, and you really have to bring these people together and have them understand that they can benefit from the strengths of all generations. And how do you make that happen in the workplace? And one more comment. I met a trainer, and she did this great program with, baby boomers and millennials, and it was Name That Tune. So she'd mix them up at a table, and then she'd have Name That Tune, and fairly, millennials wouldn't know some of the tunes, and baby boomers wouldn't know some of the tunes from the first 3 notes. So they realized for them to win the game, they really had to lean on each other and, what was most familiar to them.
So I'm not a millennial. Okay, shit. But I work in a company with a lot of millennials, and when I first started there, it was a little intimidating not being part of that. But I have to tell you that when you work with people that are passionate, very engaged, and there because of the same reason for that social mission around spreading kindness, it takes away all the kind of differences, and you're just people there for a common cause and a common reason. And so we really promote that. We don't use titles. I don't say I'm the this or that. I'm just part of the HR department. Most people in our company just talk to each other like with respect and with common decency, and we go out of our way to be kind to each other because that's one of our core values, and we think that's the right way to do business. So in terms of dealing with millennials, we we're actually learning a lot from millennials, and we've changed policies to align. We changed from the traditional 2 weeks vacation, sick days, and we combined everything into a PTO bank that people can use at their discretion, and so they can flex more time off if they need it. Gives them more flexibility and control over their time, and that's worked well. We enhanced our paid maternity so that we have 60% of our population are women, 35% are under 30, and starting families. And so we now offer a very generous maternity leave. So we're looking at ways to accommodate that generation, but I don't feel there's a big difference day to day. And I think career-wise is probably the biggest challenge is I think this generation does want to move. That's no different than my generation. We wanted to move, but we knew that there would be time that we'd have to invest to get to that next level and pay your dues and all that other stuff. That really doesn't occur as much today. It's like, okay, I want it, I can do it, I'm ready for it, throw me in, put me in, coach, and away we go. So it's a fun challenge.
I think what frustrates me about the conversation is we're letting someone else tell us what millennials are versus who's your workforce. I'm Gen X. I never had greasy hair, wearing a plaid, oversized. Like I did like Pearl Jam, but I was just not that person that everyone thought was Gen X. And so you might do lots of studies about what Gen Xers want. You know, it's like, honest to God, I just want a pizza and a beer, and I just want to work hard and go home. You know, and so it's not that difficult. So for me, I get a little bit turned off about the millennial conversation. Namely because I don't know that necessarily identifies my very young staff. Our staff at Warby Parker, we say that what we do instead is, what are those kind of characteristics that we're afraid of about millennials? If a lot of people call out that millennials are entitled, then we do what we can to stop entitlement. We interview against it, actually. We don't hire for it. We are very sensitive to entitlement. If we are, millennials typically want that new experience all the time. You know, they're kind of like jumping from job to job. Well, at Warby Parker, we have people, it's been their first job and they're here 5 and 6 years later. So we create a place of satisfaction where if they're looking for new opportunities, we're going to create those for them. So I shy away from the term. Rather, I look for those things that we're afraid of that are attached to that term. And then we're going to attack those things or work against them or help people to avoid them. In my head, I always look at people, I'm like, avoid the stereotype, just avoid it. So that's kind of our approach.
But there are a lot more selfies these days than there were back in the old days. All right.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit into more data, the data side of things. I think a lot of people always have questions on how you measure the success of programs. A lot of the programs you guys talked about sound incredibly interesting and also seem to be very effective with training and learning opportunities. So what are some of the things or the tools that you guys use to measure the data and show that your workforce is performing?
I think I know, Susan, you said you do culture survey, engagement surveys. We're doing that as well. We're surveying. We also blew up the performance management process and took the process out of it, but we want to be sure the conversations are being had, and I stole something from Adam, and we're surveying the employees to make sure that they had the conversation. How did it feel for them? Was it effective? Very simple, but we just want to make sure that we know what we need to do to help our managers be more effective communicators and have those conversations. I grew up under an HR lead who didn't want to do anything project or initiative related without measuring its success. Then don't do it, right? I mean, why put the effort in? So we do try to follow up on everything, whether it's in a survey form or we pick some sort of metric to make sure we're measuring the success of our programs and initiatives. We're growing fast. We all are very, very busy. There's too much going on, and you also don't want to keep, throwing spaghetti at the wall to your people and hoping it sticks. You want to make sure that it's the right thing. So we're using it as much as possible.
For us, our online learning tool that we use has a way for us to determine, there's a reporting mechanism on like the admin tool. So it allows us to understand how many logins we get per day, per month, per quarter, per year, how many programs have been completed. We look for completions to determine whether or not, you know, certain programs are resonating. Some are mandatory, some are not. So we are always looking at that. What we also do, this is kind of a fun, interesting thing, we found that the more people who update their profile, the more engaged they are in the learning program itself. So we measure that. And then finally, this is kind of a weird thing, but on our tool, it's a little social media feeling. It doesn't feel like a normal learning library. So for us, you can go in and you could say, hey, thanks a lot for your help today, or hey, happy birthday, or you can send each other like personal messages that are public for everyone. So I can go in as an admin and I can download every one of those comments, which is a little scary because we've given complete freedom to every one of our employees to use it. And so you load this into a spreadsheet and then you do word finds. So I try to measure how many thank yous and how many awesomes and how many I love yous and how many like you're so greats. So I look for those things. By the way, I also look for bad words, and I've only found one. Honest to God, I found one, and it was somebody saying, you're the shit. So it was actually a really good thing, but it was, yeah. But those are the kinds of things that we look to measure engagement, and then what we try to do is correlate that with our turnover and our sales and all of the other types of data that we collect from other systems that don't really feed into each other.
Can I just give the flip side? Sorry. So don't tweet this. At Warby Parker, our talent team sucks at data. We literally we can't figure out what to measure, how to measure. We sit in meetings and we're like, what can we measure? And we're all like, we can measure retention. We can measure 30, 60, 90 fill date. You know, we have all of these great ideas that lots of companies do. My question is, the reason we suck at it is I just want to know, why do we want to know this? Like, why measure for the sake of measuring? Now, there are questions that we really do have. Like, we lose candidates because of our pay, or we lose we lose employees at a 2-year mark. There are definitely things we want to uncover, but I just encourage you guys, don't measure for the sake of measuring, because you will get lost and then you'll create excuses for things and behaviors that you actually are trying to fix. So first figure out, what are you trying to answer? What's the problem? Or what's the thing you're trying to uncover? What's the insight you're trying to get? Then figure out, what then do I measure and how can I measure it, and is that accurate, and is that measurement actually telling me the answer to this? And that's why we suck so bad at it, because we're really trying to figure out the right metrics for us, because we can put it out there. We can do reports up the wazoo. We use tons of different systems, but they just don't matter to how we run our business. And this is why we're really searching for those right metrics for us. So I admit we suck at it, but I think we're going to be great at maybe in a couple years. Maybe I'll let you know. I'll give you that metrics next time.
I think you're right. I think data is a really hard thing to figure out. I think everyone talks about big data. It's a word that makes people vomit these days, because you always hear about big data, you got to know about it. You know, I'm a huge fan of employee engagement surveys, culture surveys, whatever you want to call them. There's tons of great vendors. Culture Amp is here tonight. You know, I've used Perceptics before. I really love pulse feedback, though. Where managers are going out there and talking to people. There's great data that can come out of these pulse quick feedback things. There's a company called Butterfly that we just started piloting with. There's so much out there, so many great vendors that can help you gather data. The question is, what do you do with that data, right? The biggest data point that I look for is, how much are my employees coming to HR after that I've introduced them to a new program, a new session, a new piece of data or metrics. The more they come to me, that's my ultimate metric of success. Are they using me as a resource? I think HR has a really bad reputation for most employees. A lot of employees are afraid to approach HR. And I think that's something we have to kind of turn around. And the more people come to me, that's the data metric that I look at for whether or not my HR team is being successful and whether or not our company is being successful. Because HR needs to be at the table just as much as finance, and they need to be in those management meetings. And I think it's so important for us to really, data can help us get in there, but it's when they start coming to us to say, what can I do with this data? That's when we become successful.
Great. So on a final note, before we open it up for audience Q&A, just wanted to see if you guys had any advice to give to everyone here on, as they're thinking about reinventing their people experiences, what would you tell them?
We're going down the line? Sure. Okay. So I love these things. I do. I love meeting people. I love hearing what other companies are doing, and I love that you guys get ideas from that. I would encourage you guys to, there is no one size fits all. If you don't know like what is going to work for your company, like immediately when I came from Spotify to Warby Parker, I had 20 different ideas my first week of what I could do at Warby Parker until I started working at Warby Parker. And I realized these aren't going to work here. So they were great for Spotify, and the intention is interesting, but I've got to find a different way. And that's what innovation is. It is finding a new way or a different way to do something that is either a problem or being done or a solution. So I just encourage you guys to figure out for your group, your employee base, your company, what are the things that I'm trying, what's my objective in all of this? And you can take these ideas, but it's not plug and play. You've got to figure out how it's going to fit for you guys. It is not square peg in a round hole, and you're going to beat yourselves up to try to make programs that don't fit work, and then you're going to lose credibility in your companies. So be inspired for sure about what companies are doing, but figure out a way that it's going to fit for you guys. That's going to be the best way to go about it.
I'm struggling on this one. One bit of advice that I had gotten before, and I love to share it. If you're a baseball fan, bunts and singles are good to get on base. Get bunts and singles. Don't go for the grand slam. Don't go for the home run every time. Just get on base. So find the little wins and win. And little wins can become larger wins later. I think a lot of people want to go in, whether it's you're in a new role or with a new company, and you want to go in and you want to make a big splash, and there's time for that. I think it's better to gain credibility through just getting on base. I think that that's a really important thing. As I started at my company at Shake Shack, there was no training material. I think there were a couple of old publisher documents that an intern had come in one summer and created, and I came over having worked at P.F. Chang's for like 10 years and was like, oh, I got to start from scratch, and I'm a department of one. And for me, it wasn't about rolling out this online training program. It was about taking the documents that we had and putting a little bit of lipstick on them. Lipstick on a pig, we joke about that all the time at work. And even just that was better. And then little by little, you can take it further, and that's my advice for you.
Yeah, I think my advice when we think about the employee experience is that, you know, we could produce all of these programs, initiatives, wonderful things. Your company could have a foosball table, snacks, you know, great gift bags when you onboard, you know, the Bonobos, learning and development platform, and those are all wonderful things that actually attract candidates to your job, but I don't think that anybody who walks out of a company is saying it's because I didn't get that foosball table in my, you know, free space. They are leaving because of their manager, and they're leaving because of how they're treated or how they feel in that organization. So at the end of the day, it's all about how that employee feels to work for that manager, to work with their colleagues. And they need to know what they need to do, how they're doing along the way, and if their work matters. It's so simple, and it's free. That is free. You don't have to pay for that. You just have to get people there. So as managers and leaders and HR professionals, we should all think about how can we create an environment in which people feel that they're cared for, that their managers, the people that they report into, really are invested in them as individuals and as humans, and make a really nice and wonderful civil environment.
if anyone's worked with me, they know I have a kind of a catchphrase, and it's R&D. Most people think that means research and development. I take it to mean rip off and duplicate. I've toned it down a little bit now. I call it replicate and deploy. Some people don't like the idea of ripping off. There's copyright infringement. I worked in book publishing. That was not well liked. But honestly, they are great ideas. Everyone in this room has a great idea that works for their company. But to Susan's point, you have to make it. You can't just take it out of a box and plop it down in your company. You have to take the time to understand, what piece of this can I steal? What piece of this can I try to incorporate? And I think that's what's really made me successful, is I just try to R&D from all the brilliant people that are around me, some of the great people in this room that can share things with me.
So I would say listen. So talk to people. You can do a survey, but you can do mini focus groups. You can call someone in your office or have a coffee with them, but listen to what's going on and what people are telling you. And you'll start to hear patterns, and you'll start to hear themes about what's happening in the workforce or what people want. Try things. Don't do the big bang. I think the singles and the butts. Try things out, test them out, test out the new whatever it is, as opposed to going all in. Because sometimes when you go all in and it doesn't quite work, it just never feels good. And so try some things out in smaller groups. Simplify. I think the biggest lesson I've learned over my career is keep things simple. The human brain doesn't work well with complexity. And performance reviews and all that stuff, I don't have any issue with them, but simplify them. And then lastly, do it with honesty, transparency. Let people know what you're doing, why you're doing it. Make it authentic. And somehow it has to resonate within your company's brand or culture. If not, it's like a foreign thing that's kind of coming in and people are like, what is this? So try to make sure that it somehow fits in with your company, your leadership, the feeling that people get when they come to work.
Okay, well, I would love to open it up for everyone here, anyone here who has any questions for the panelists. Yes. Oh, sorry. We have mic runners, so just to make sure your question is heard, we'll pass the mics around.
Oh, okay, great. My name is Melissa. I work for VHX, which was just recently acquired by Vimeo. And as people operations manager, I want to know, when you have a great idea or a big idea or a learning experience from somewhere else, and then you want to bring it forward, how do you get executive buy-in from your CEOs and your upper management?
When I started at Warby, they had tried a lot of different things. There was a young group, and they had asked other companies how they do it. So Warby is a copier in that sense. Whenever we ask, should we try something, like, who else has done it, But what had happened was, again, as I just said before, when they were releasing things to the entire company and hadn't really vetted it out, they started to lose credibility for HR programs. Like, this isn't going to work, or I'm not interested, or whatever. So one of the things that Jim said that I think is actually crucial is test. So we want to try coaching. Well, we'll pick 10 people to try this coaching program and get their feedback. We want to try a new performance management tool. Let's try this department and ask them, you try this for a month and then give us feedback. So then when we go to the executives, we're like, we've tested this within our departments. Here's what the feedback has been. Here's how it answers the problem that we are, trying to solve. So I really encourage, it's okay to test. I think in the past we used to not want to test because we're afraid groups would say that they're being favorited. How come I didn't get to try that? How come I didn't get to test out the 4-day work week or whatever? We don't do that, I just was going to say. But I think that it's an interesting concept, and it's a way for you to get some really solid feedback that is specific to your company, and that kind of feedback goes a long way.
I'd say, business cases as well. It's always great to kind of share results, share statistics, but going to Susan's point, I use competition. People are inherently competitive, and if you can, I learned this at one of my former companies, like, some of the different groups loved to be at the top of the food chain. So, we told them, we're rolling it out there. And all of a sudden it gets that buzz and like, no, we need it first. So really play against that sometimes. It doesn't sound like the most ethical thing to do or fun thing to do, but it works. People are inherently competitive.
And we use focus groups. We brought a lot of the programs to the people, and once the people were on board, the senior executives, they couldn't deny it at that point.
Oh, can I just say one last thing? Also, and then don't get discouraged, because a lot of times they will say no. And then you just got to come at them with a different thing or a different angle and then represent another time or whatever. But don't get discouraged by that, which is totally easy, especially when when you have the best intentions. So.
I think it also depends on the thing that you're trying to make happen, and on a way smaller scale. So not even like a big project that requires a ton of money, but just when you know that you're going to need a higher level buy-in. I think it's helpful to know how to navigate some of the decision makers and influencers within your organization. I think of it like a chess game, and I think if I can move this piece here, then I'll get that piece. And if I can get those two pieces, then I'm going to get that piece and these two pieces over here, and I can start to think about ways to generate enough interest that you can through that kind of navigation on smaller kind of projects. That's always been a helpful thing for me.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about one more thing. There's a difference between getting executive buy-in and getting executives to do the thing you need everybody else to do because everybody else wants them to do it too. That's two different things, right? So I think it's more important to get your executives to do those things, whether it's having great conversations with their direct reports at the same time as the conversations you're having around performance with the rest of the organization. So it is more difficult, I think, to get them to do those things, and it is about relationships and don't give up.
Dan Love from Everwise. The idea that failing to learn is pretty common now, and it makes a good soundbite, but I'm just curious, the reality is that in a lot of organizations there's actually very little tolerance for failure, and if I'm thinking about my promotion or performance, then I'm kind of loath to fail, and so curious how you guys think about making that idea a little bit more real, and whether it's just trying to carve out areas where, or expectations about, here's a place where you can actually try things and fail, and make it a little bit more real as opposed to just a nice kind of soundbite.
So what Kind was founded on several failed concepts. Our CEO had several businesses that didn't work, and so he just persisted, and once he found what he believed in the most, which was the Kind bar that he developed, he just went full throttle. And I think that culture, that's permeated our existence, and he speaks about failure, that if we're not taking those risks and we're not trying things, then we will stagnate. And so I think some of it does come from kind of the top, so to speak, and there has to be a level of acceptance around trying things and failing, and that's okay. It's a difficult concept, and I've been doing this a long time, and it's easy to say, but I can tell you, at least in our organization, we've tried many things that haven't worked, and we sit down and we talk about what didn't work, and we try to learn from them, and that starts at the very top.
Here's two really practical things. The first thing about failure is if you call it out before someone calls it out in you, the sting is less. Like if you say, hey, I messed up on this, or this didn't work, here's my learnings about it, versus someone coming to you and saying, what the F happened here? It's like the sting is less. So actually, you're saying I've learned something from it. So I really encourage people to not be afraid of owning their failures because you want to be the one to call it out. The second thing is if you call anything a test, you're making room for failure. So instead of saying, I want to do this and I'm going to take this risk, you can say, I want to try this test. And I want to give this a go with this test group or in this test process, because that's basically saying that there's a potential to fail. And so if you set it up that way, you're already setting the expectation that it's going to be okay if it does fail. So those are just two practical things I would.
Again, own your failures. It's okay, and I think to your point, there's more integrity in owning it than trying to avoid it and not owning it.
I think one of my former colleagues who's actually here with us, she introduced me to a concept in Freakonomics on a podcast that talked about the premortem. Instead of a postmortem, do a premortem and get people excited to fail. Ask them, where are we going to fail? And let's all try to figure that out. And it's a very different concept, and it gets people excited about the idea of like, we can fail. Let's figure out how we're going to do it.
I'm going to steal that one.
Thanks, Adriana.
Hi, I'm Ashley from Kind. I have a question about how your departments work with other folks within your organization. What teams are you interacting with most, and what's the overlap in particular with communications, marketing, those types of disciplines? And Jim, you're off the hook for this one.
Thank you.
We interact with all of them, and I would say, and the team is here very well. There's a high regard for HR and the input, or our POPs team, we call it People Operations Team. They've all of the team members have established relationships within the organization. They're very trusted. And in regard to communications and marketing, we lean on marketing a lot for some of our, or we have in the past, for some of our branding and how we want to present some of our materials, but we've recently taken that into our team and produced our own work, especially a video. You could see it online on my LinkedIn account. It's called Fit for Success. It's fun. So we do a lot on our own. But it all has the same, in regard to communication, the same voice and tone that we use across the business. And I'm very lucky and fortunate that many members of my team have been longstanding employees at Bonobos, so it works really well.
At Shake Shack, my team is actually called People Resources, which we're training and we're HR. And so we kind of break into two sections. We are very involved in operations, and we write and create all of the operations training materials, including how much salt you put on a Shack burger. So we teach all of that, and then we also have the leadership development pieces and the recruiting and employee relations and benefits and all of that. So we work very closely with every department in terms of helping them develop their leaders, helping them work through culture pieces that they want to implement on their teams and those sorts of things. And then, like I said, day-to-day involved in the operations as well. So we're a little bit of a hybrid, I think, than what most HR teams are, just because of our piece of it that is very directly related to operations.
I agree. HR has to work with every single unit, but there's 3 units that I love to work with the most. One, I've been lucky enough to have corporate communications departments who have helped me very much on employment branding, have really done a great job about getting us press, getting us surveys, all that great stuff. The second group that I think is crucial to work with is your finance partners. We need them to invest in us, and they always, I've been maybe unfortunate to work in a lot of companies where finance really runs the show. And we really need their buy-in. So for me, building that relationship with the CFO is probably one of the most important things, and then his team underneath, to get that buy-in, to invest in a new ATS or to invest in an engagement survey. Those are the guys you have to really done. And the third one is one that probably no one expects, which is your administrative assistant population, because they're really the ones that make the place run. And I think we often forget about that. They are the team dads, team moms, they take care of everyone. They get people onboarded. They answer every question. And I think oftentimes people forget about how important those guys are just because they're overtime eligible and they manage calendars. But they really do so much more, and they can be a big part of your culture. And I love them. So.
One of the things that I have found a little bit that's innovative about Warby, and very different from what I've done in the past, throughout my whole career, HR has been called a service center. It's like we're there to help everybody, so we service, right? You're our customer, our employee. At Warby, it's not necessary. We don't approach it as a service center. We are thought leaders for the business. So it is a very different way of approaching business. So it's not like anyone comes to us and say, you do this for us. We go to them and say, we're doing this for you. So it's just a different approach on how you then deal with departments. So instead of them coming to you and they say, here's my problem, find a solution, we go to them and they're like, here's your problem, here's your solution. And it's just it's such a different way of collaboration from that point on, a different respect level. And so if you can find that way to shift, to be the thought leader, to be proactive for the things versus waiting for people to come to you, really being in touch with the business and seeing where those kind of weak points are and finding the solutions, you're going to find, I think, that the interactions with the departments are really based on respect versus like a need. And it's just such a different way of doing talent.
Hi. Hi, guys. Adriana from FanDuel. So my question is about performance management, or career discussions as we also call them. So there's been this huge shift now where we're getting away from ratings. But understanding now that performance really follows like a power law or a long tail curve where you have a few employees that will give you like 10x what everyone else does. They're really like the handful of people, if they left, your company would really like crumble, versus you have some really high performers and very little low performers. What are you guys doing to identify who those like hyper performers are, and really allowing them to continue to flourish while helping everyone else get into a place where they can be hyper performers too?
So, have you seen my video, Adriana? Just checking. So yes, we took out, for instance, the rating. So figuring out exactly how to collect the data and look at it and then address those high performers and looking at it on curves, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going back to data doesn't matter. Susan, thank you, I'm using it right now. But I have been thinking about, at the end of the year, what we really want to understand. And there are several data points that I'm going to be asking managers to pull or extract from the conversations that they're having. And it probably is going to look like this because, like everything, it is an experiment or a test. So if we fail, it's okay. We have a little wiggle room. So I'm probably going to look at something like, do I want this person to stay on my team because they're valuable? Yes or no? Do I need to promote this person? Because I might lose them if I don't get them that next opportunity and they're promotable based on what we've designed. 3, is there development opportunities, just development opportunities in their current role? And 4, is there a performance issue that I need to immediately address? And I think with those data points, without rating them, and it's for managers to really put some thought around what they need to do next with their employee, and for them to then have that discussion is most important. I think those outliers, they pop up. People know who they are. I mean, we're very fortunate that we're small enough to really know, just by, the nature of the size of our business, who's really going to, make or break the organization if they left. But there are larger organizations that it may not be as simple as that. And yes, I understand that that might be a struggle for those of companies like Adams that's, you're blowing up the performance management process. Do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you. I mean, we've typically, and most of the companies I've worked with have relied on the 9-box talent audits, talent reviews, whatever you want to call them, performance and potential, and really have conversations. But where I've spent the last few years is really trying to make that easier for managers to know how to plot, because that still is a very subjective thing. Like, what is potential? What does that mean? How does potential look in marketing versus how does potential look in finance? Very different. So I've spent a lot of time kind of figuring out definitions, but we use that to inform a lot of what we do. We have other tools out there to see we have something called StarMind right now that we're experimenting with. It's an artificial intelligence where you ask a question and it goes out to certain people. It learns who knows answers and experts, and you can see the engagement levels of people using that. So you kind of can learn a little bit on the back end of the dashboard a little bit. These are crazy things, but I just think that, for you to have conversations with your it doesn't have to be a 9-box. It's have conversations with your managers, have conversations with their colleagues, do 360s if you can. Like, just be out there, walking the floor. You'll really learn who the top people are, to Sarah's point.
Know your people.
Know your people.
I'm not a big believer in the curves and the top 10%. I mean, I've seen it, I've been part of it. I'm not sure that it really works anymore. I think I think all people have talent, all people have potential. Everyone comes to work every day, and you hire them for a reason. And so it is up to you to invest in that individual, and not everyone's going to learn at the same pace, but everyone can make a contribution. And I think the one thing that I really love about Kind is that we take that approach. We've hired a team member, we've invested in them, we're going to be loyal to them, or we're going to help them grow and succeed. And we're going to do our best to do that. And if we don't, then it's our failure that they don't. Our turnover is very low. We don't lose a lot of people. We do performance reviews, we give feedback, and our training is spend 20% of your time looking backwards at what they did, spend 80% of the time looking forward at what they're capable of and how you're going to help them, and change the conversation to the future. But this concept of the top 10% means that you've got a bottom 10% and a whole middle group there that is kind of, in that middle section where I'm not sure where they go. So I would rather look at every team member and say, let's make them better and hold ourselves accountable to that. And that does start with our CEO. He's a big believer in that, and that permeates throughout our culture.
I think we have time for one more question. If anybody wants to conclude the evening with a special question. Okay.
Hi there, my name is Grace. I wanted to ask a question. It's sort of similar to what's currently playing in your iPod question. But for you folks, what career development tools or motivational tools are you currently using for yourselves to really be successful in what you do?
For me, the motivation is the energy in our company and the reason that we exist and what we do. So I think when you find that, it's very special, and when you can connect with the purpose or the reason that your company is there, or you're doing what you're doing, or the team that you're leading, I think it's all the motivation you need in the morning to get up and go do what you do. And I think if you can live within that level of integrity and honesty for yourself, you'll be happy and you'll be fine.
I read a lot online, so I'm reading blog posts and posts from Business Insider or Fast Company, and I like to know what's happening in the technology space and in startups. And I'm reading it because I'm finding that those are the companies that are doing some really innovative things and challenging status quo, not even just in talent, but in the way they run business. In 2015, we were recognized as the most innovative company by Fast Company. I don't think anyone believed it. They're like, an eyeglass company is innovative. And so, I wasn't working at Warby Parker at the time, and all I did was obsessively read about why would an eyeglass company be considered innovative. And as I was peeling back all these things, I just thought, I want to work there. And so I think what you're going to find is, as you're just reading kind of the topical news on what's happening in business, there's so many areas of inspiration for talent. And just one other thing, at our company we have a talent innovation group. It's right now just talent people, but we're opening it up to other people in the company. So if our whole company they're big readers, and I get links like on a daily basis. Did you read what this company's doing? Did you read this? And so what I do is I just challenge this innovation team to say, like, can we do this here? Can we move to a 4-day work week? Can we get rid of performance reviews? Can we go to a 12-month paternity leave? I mean, can we do this? And we just ask those questions about our staff, the way we run business, and so we're just challenging the things that are happening in the news. I think that just makes you a much sharper and relevant talent person.
I'm a big fan of Fast Company magazine too. I think it's one of those places for me that I'm not going to find very many hamburger stories out there on Fast Company, but I'm sure going to find out what is happening and cool and going on with innovative companies, and I think that is just a great place to be. The other thing for me is I like to read business books about successful companies too. I actually came from Southwest Airlines. I was at Southwest Airlines for 10 years working for my hero, Herb Kelleher, who is, read about him, learn about him, look at him online. He's awesome, one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And then I got to work for Danny Meyer. So for me, I've learned a lot just from internal leadership that I've worked with. I've been fortunate that way. But in the absence of getting to work with them, I think it's important to take a look at some of those kinds of books. Setting the Table is Danny's book about hospitality. And Nuts was the book about Herb Kelleher, because he's a crazy man, but he's awesome. and again, fast company. Those kinds of experiences for me have been what inspire.
I very similarly do a lot of reading online, a lot of books, and I just grab what I think may work or may not and figure it out. I also recently, moving into a position in HR where I don't report to an HR professional, decided to grow my network and support. So I reached out to people who had been in senior level roles in HR who are dealing with boards, et cetera, and have started having coffee and meetings. I go to a lot of workshops and panels myself to hear other HR leaders or business leaders and CEOs speak so that I can learn from that. And then fairly, I just hired a coach for myself for communication. So, there's never an opportunity, or there's always an opportunity to learn and grow, and to also show your own team that you still have a way to go as well.
I would kind of reiterate a lot of whatever everyone else said. My go-to is Harvard Business Review blog. I don't read the magazine as much. I like short snippets, so that's really helpful for me. And I try to, honestly, just like Sarah was talking about, get out of the office once a month. When I had taken over my first running an L&D role, I'd never done it really before. I was always passionate about it. I just made it a point to go to every single person, every single event, and introduce myself. And then, I worked at Condé Nast at the time, so you could say come to the Condé Nast cafeteria. It was a nice draw. So I got a lot of people there to come to me, which was really nice. But I've kept that up even since I've left that company. And now I'm actually passionate about blogging myself. So if you go to my Twitter, you can see some of the things I'm blogging about. That's a blog. But no, I think there's just so much great stuff out there in terms of blogs. Podcasts are my new thing too. I didn't use them up until like 3 weeks ago, but I have a newborn at home, and when she's trying to go to bed, I'm just listening to podcasts. So it's really well, works really well.
Well, everyone can please join me in a round of applause for our panel.